it a desperation move. But when COVID hit, everything shut down. We weren't doing workshops. I had been doing about 4 workshops a month. We had a community that was meeting together quite regularly. And then COVID happened, and it just felt like we need each other and we need conversations on how everybody's doing. That was really what the pop-in was at the time. It was a breakfast pop-in at the time. And we had people from all over the place. We had a couple of people from Texas that were showing up and different countries that were showing up. And so it kind of expanded this idea of how are we showing up in the work that we do. And for some of you that don't know Candy and the work that I do here at Candy, my name is Lisa, and Candy Event Consulting was really birthed on the idea that there are thousands, millions of people out there. Almost every one of us plans events to some extent, whether that's with our family, a gathering, maybe with our team at work, maybe it's in the role of an administrative professional, maybe you're running these for your own team at work. Nonprofits, they're very busy with galas right now. So everybody has, I believe, an event planner in them. And this is, I have to actually share, this was on Facebook Marketplace for $20. Nice. This is actually a piece of art from my friend Dean Stanton. So if you've seen his work around town, I didn't tell the lady, but I picked it up, and it's really great because it actually kind of matches the whole ultimate event experience that we have going on. But what this is, and what I wanted this to be, is this opportunity for you to look yourself in the mirror and say, I am an event planner. It is important that I'm bringing people together, and how do we do that in better ways? So I'm so glad you're all here. This will be monthly. We're going to have a different topic every month. Thank you so much to Susan McGuire for being here today. Let's give her a hand. First one. And to come when it's still August, because we're still kind of in summer mode. So yeah, I'm really glad that you said yes, and I'm glad that you all made a decision to be here tonight. What I want to talk about tonight, that I was saying in a conversation Susan and I had, that I think this is probably the most important topic when we talk about events. It's one of the biggest reasons I'm an event coach or a connection strategy coach, because when we're talking about the events we plan, many of us are planners, or we're really excited about getting the details together and the theme together and making sure that we're checking things off on the boxes. And I grew up as a volunteer and working in a community in Winnipeg and in Saskatoon and all over the country, basically, on event teams. And it's felt like everybody was at their wits' end. By the end of the event, everyone's running for the hills. People are exhausted. Even if they're happy, they're exhausted. A lot of people don't want to do it again. And they're not necessarily telling that to the organizer. They're telling that to each other, like, whew, that was great, or that was terrible. They'll have to find someone else next time. The idea of really paying attention to the people that are surrounding us, and I had to learn myself to put people over projects. And for many of us, I am so energized by a great project, and I can work late into the night and I can get all these great things done. And even in our relationships, it's why I'm so focused on connection. Sometimes I was only calling people when I needed something. How many of you have been, you don't have to put your hand up, guilty of that, where it really becomes something, Jim could do that, or we need that budget taken care of. Why don't we call them? Or we need someone to fill in. I know that you've all probably experienced that phone call, and you're like, well, where were you, 3 months ago or a year ago when, I asked for some help, or I just wanted to have a conversation. So the idea of putting people over the projects that we run is so important. It was interesting. I was sitting with a client team yesterday, and I'm integrated in this team, and I'm a happy team member, even though I'm coming in as a Candy coach for them. And the topic was about performance reviews. So I'm sitting kind of a little bit of a bug on the wall because I won't get the same kind of performance review as everyone else. But the conversation they started having was, what goals are they going to set for themselves, and how do those feed into the goals of the team? And the conversation became a little bit muddy because they're like, but I've been working on this for 6 months, and then I want to get this done, and then this other person has these other goals, and they were trying to figure out, well, what are we trying to accomplish big picture? But what I was thinking about this morning after this great afternoon with this team, and they were asking the hard questions, what came to me this morning when I was thinking about talking about event teams, so often these teams aren't people that we necessarily work with all the time. They might be people that are kind of gathered from people we know. They might be people from around the office. Oh, she's really good at planning, or he's really good at the budget, or at, videography and taking care of that. So you start to assemble teams, but we don't really go through that work of saying, what are we trying to accomplish? Yes, there's an event on this date and we want to have this many people in the seats, but sometimes we don't back it up enough to say, okay, who's at the table? Take that deep breath. Who have we assembled here? What are we trying to accomplish? And how do we actually set goals for ourselves? Because we have to get something out of it, right? Why not? And then how do we let that process actually feed into this bigger purpose of what we're trying to accomplish together? And at the end of the day, what I truly believe, and I've been doing this work now for almost 15 years in December, I know that if we take the step back and we ask our people, what do you want out of this experience? More often than not, they want to see an amazing project, an amazing event, an amazing campaign happen. And they're all in. And it just means we have to have the dialogue around who is the person, the individual at the table, and how are we all going to feed in together to get to something that we can't do on our own. That's the beauty of an event. That's what motivates me to continue to do this work. And I think why these pop-ins are so important, because we're going to talk today about people, but we're going to talk about four other topics right up until the holidays, the winter holidays. We won't say that too loud. But I do believe that these are vital conversations, but it's about having these conversations in community. And it's one of those reasons why we want to do this Q&A at the end, because it's going to give you that opportunity to actually apply it to your own situation. How can we can pick your brain, Susan, tonight. You've been so kind to be willing to do that. And then how does that feed into the work that we're doing, the teams that we're building? Even if it's a team that has been together a very long time, how many of you have been on teams where maybe you've been together a decade or many, many years, and there's just a set way of doing things? You have that opportunity to shake it up a bit and to say it could actually be done a little bit differently. So without further ado, come on up, Susan. I met Susan when I was I was trying to think where we met the first time, but there was a coach that we were working with to put Dare to Lead together.
Yes.
And you were one of the coaches on site to help the people going through the program.
Yes.
And we met and hit it off and kind of stayed connected.
Yes.
And your husband, actually, that was such a funny thing. I have a magazine called Moments. And Moments, the last one we did was Climb in 2021, and I saw that you knew this guy that was this incredible climbing coach, and worked at Boulder, and I'm like, how do you know Pete? He's like, well, I'm actually married to the guy. So we had the cool opportunity to actually go bouldering with Susan and Pete, and I just love how you're showing up for people, and I love that you're here for this topic. Susan calls herself a people whisperer, and she's going to share with us today specifically. I love that you have popcorn on the first slide. That makes my heart happy. But we're going to just let you have the floor for however long you need in this presentation, and then we're going to open up the floor.
I am thrilled to be here, and this is a wonderful opportunity for me to put myself out of my comfort zone and to connect with you in a different kind of way. The reason why I'm excited about this is because I have for many years been working with people. I come from my background being a professional human resource person, and I spent 25-ish plus years in human resources. And so when I got to a place in my career where I thought, you know what, I think I would like to be able to help others with some of the challenges that I've gone through so that they don't need to spend as much time and sleepless nights as maybe I have done. So I will be sharing with you a little bit about my story this evening, and I do want you to walk away with some tips and tricks, something practical that's very important to me in how it relates to your life. So we will be taking a moment of reflection a couple of times throughout my speaking portion in order for me to just ask you to think about how this impacts you and your personal situation. The chaos that I referred to on the first slide was a representation of how I felt in my life earlier on in my career, and I would say not that long ago, probably 10 years ago or so, where I had accomplished a lot of my career, what I thought successfully. The feedback that I had received from my leaders was always very positive, and this worked for me until it didn't. And so on one hand, I was able to achieve results. I was able to accomplish what it was that I set my mind out to accomplish. And then one day I received some terrible feedback. But before I get there, I grew up in a household. I would love to be able to share with you today 3 key learnings that I've walked away with. And that is about effective confidence. So we know confidence, we know self-confidence, very big and deep word. I call it effective confidence, and you'll learn a little bit more why. But it's because we can be confident, but it might not have the impact on the people around us that we're hoping it will have. I would love for you to understand and be able to better manage conflict. Conflict can be minor and it can be massive, but it is conflict. And so we have physical responses when something is happening that isn't necessarily going very smoothly. And so I would like us to be able to distinguish when a moment like this is starting to happen for us so that we can take a moment and choose how we would like to respond. And we'll walk through some of that together. And last but certainly not least, channeling your energy. Because I can imagine that as event planners, and I've been there myself, but not to a great deal, that as Lisa mentioned, you're all working towards a very important goal. And I know that timelines are also very important, and all of the aspects of what you're trying to accomplish are important, and you can really feel an energy suck when this is happening. So what I would love to do is to be able to give you ways to identify when your energy is going off course and be able to really focus in on the things that really matter at the time. So a little bit about me is that, as I was saying earlier, it was working for me until it wasn't. And my background is that I grew up the youngest of 5 girls, and we had a small house, and I always shared a room. And so it was pretty chaotic. There was 5 of us in 8 years. And so I know my poor dad. But we were very all over the place, as kids always are. And I, as the youngest, felt as though now when I look back that I was teaching myself and learning how to have a voice. So I felt as though I needed to instinctually sort of speak loudly. I needed to get attention. If I wanted to be heard around the dinner table, I was like right there with it. This was teaching me, and it was also reinforcing that having this voice and having this determination, this assertiveness, if you will, was a tool that was working for me. So my family knew it, my friends knew it, my relationships knew it, and so I was going on my merry way. I was also receiving, as I mentioned, the results that I wanted at work. It was favorable feedback. I was getting things done. I went after what I wanted to go after, and I received positive feedback around my performance. Until one day, my boss called me into his office, and he let me know that 3 people had gone to see him, and they were complaining about me, and they referred to me as a bully. So I cried because my heart sank, and I was devastated, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? How did this happen? Because the confusion was that I'm also somebody who reflects. I go home at night. I think, and I did at this time too, I've always been like this. I go home and I think, what did I do with my team today? How could it have been better? What do I think landed well? What do I think didn't land well? How was my message being responded to? So I found myself being very thoughtful, I thought, and I was, but there was something missing. And I needed to figure out what that gap was. What the heck is going on here? How could I have been so wrong in my assessment of what it was that I was doing? So my key learnings have been to know myself, my strengths, my weaknesses, so that I can not only feel confident, but I can feel effectively confident. My boss asked me if I was interested in receiving coaching. And I said, absolutely yes. I didn't know what it was. It was my first introduction to any kind of coaching. It was like a life raft. It was like, yes, please, I'm sinking. I don't know what I need to do right now. I thought I had it figured out, so I didn't know what my options were. And clearly I needed to take responsibility and do something different. I had no idea what this was. So can you think about a time when you have felt confused by or uncertain of others and their response towards you? For example, you know when it feels like things just click and it's easy and you think, oh yeah, we've got some things in common. I'm really jiving with this person. It's no problem. We just swimming along and everything's great. Then sometimes it's harder. It's like, what is going on with this, right? And so we can obviously have these relationships in our teams and we need to be effective, but yet it can be really challenging at times. So what happens in that moment when it's feeling really hard? I suspect that, like me, I was wondering, what could I do differently? What is happening in this moment? What is causing them to be like this? We've all been there. And then the physical reaction, right? My heart starts to beat a little faster. I might feel myself getting a little bit agitated, you know. I might want to leave the room or I might want to hang up the Zoom call. And I'm not feeling very comfortable or confident in that moment about what I'm able to do because I feel that my choices, what I know up until this point, have been exhausted. And yet I'm still faced with this person who seems to think differently and feel differently about what we're trying to achieve than I do. So when we are wondering, we are in the opposite place as self-confident because it's not a place we feel grounded. We're asking ourselves, why is this happening? How should I handle this? This isn't me being able to step into something going, I think I know how to respond to this situation and let me try to navigate down this path. It feels more like a bit of a dead end. So in the early days of my story, I did feel very confident about myself, but I wasn't effectively confident, which is now what I call it. And so my equation to share with you, if I may, is in order to be effectively confident, we need to first know ourselves and we need to know people around us in order for this to feel easy. I'm going to share with you a tool that helped me. I do come from HR. I've taken lots of assessments over the years. They're all helpful. This isn't about me selling you anything because they don't pay me anything to do this. But it truly is from my heart something that changed my life, and that's where I thought the value would come from. So this tool was something that I took during my coaching training, and there was about 25 of us that used this tool at the same time. And I was able to see what my motivations were. So this introduced the concept of motivations into my life and the way that I talk. So the SDI, or Strengths Deployment Inventory, talks about the Motivational Value System, or MVS. And the point of me sharing this with you is so that you can see that we all have a piece of people, process, and performance in us. We all have it. The key is to what degree do we have it? Do we have a lot of something and a little of something else? There's only 100% total. So how is it that this is working in my particular context, and how might it be working for you? Because it will be either slightly different or very different. And this is where I felt relief, because I could finally name it something. I could finally understand that all of us in that room were similar in these ways, but just varying degrees. And I just latched onto that idea and I thought, you know what, because I came in somewhere in the middle where they were all balanced, more or less. I had a performance was a little bit higher than people and process. And in that moment, I said, that's what I've been practicing, right? This is a strength. My assertiveness is a strength. At times it could be overdone. That's another concept, is our strengths can be overdone sometimes. And so when I think about what this gave to me was an understanding of this is why I am results orientated. This is why I go to a place of, okay, team, this is what we need to do, rather than maybe, how was your weekend? Like, my go-to place is about the results. Up until that point, I hadn't been practicing enough the go-to place of people. And my colleagues in that room, some of them were all about people. And then their results orientation or performance orientation was much lower in percentage. It was interesting because we had flip charts like this placed around the room, and we were told to go to the place where our results led us. And so we talked about that. It was very eye-opening where the people in the room said, oh my God, like I am all about the process. I care about the data. I care about what the research is telling us. I need more information before I can decide something. And here I am making quick decisions and having no problem making a decision based on the information I have. So you can begin to see how this can be rubbing with the people in our group. Putting feelings into words can actually reduce the force of unpleasant emotions. Dr. Dan Siegel, professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine, coined this concept as name it to tame it. By naming what we are feeling, we reduce the intensity of the emotion and feel less overwhelmed. Yes, I felt that in that very moment, and I still continue to feel that today. I feel like I can anchor myself in some language, in some words that make me understand this world a little bit better. My coach said to me, and I'll never forget this, that you're able to pepper your motivations or your strengths. And so what they meant by that was that in any given situation, I can decide how much of something I want to put. And so because I like to cook and I like food, I call it my recipe, right? Dash of this, hint of that. And so I'm able to think more cognizant of how is it that I'm showing up in this moment? What does this moment need? Does it need me to step into something and make a decision quickly? Or does it need me to be listening and focused on the person that I'm speaking to in order for it to feel appropriate and effective? So let's take a few moments to reflect on how you may be motivated. If you have paper or anything for that matter, draw out an MVS triangle like you've seen. If you were to sketch that out really quickly and write the words people, performance, process in each corner of your triangle, what percentage do you think that you would apply for yourself in the way that you first respond? And I'll give you a prompt or an example to help you with this. Okay? So it's about when you're faced with a challenge, for example, what order do you put these for yourself? So when you're faced with a challenge at work, what percentage of focus do you place on performance? Do you have thoughts like, I wonder how much time this will take? What is the best outcome possible? I really want this to be good. My client needs this, so I want to be sure it meets their expectations. Okay? So you may think, heck yeah, I'm that kind of all the time. That was sort of me. Process sounds like, I could really use more information before I begin. What were the results last time? What does the data tell us? What order will I tackle this in to be more efficient with my time? Does that feel like you? Does that feel like a small degree or a big degree? And how does it compare to the amount of performance you just felt? And then finally, the people. Do you have thoughts like, who will be impacted by this? How could I involve others? Who needs to be a part of this? And will my client be happy with this? Do you have a sense of whether there's a overarching feeling when I express those things? Just think about it to yourself and you think, oh, okay, well, maybe I have some indication of what's important to me. What am I motivated by? And so what, Susan? What does this have to do with how we're trying to get the most out of our teams? So let's talk about conflict, baby. Yes. Let's talk about it. So remember our equation, know thyself plus know others, and you'll have effective self-confidence. So what happens is, now that we have a better sense of what motivates us and we can attach some of those, the ways that we think to them, now we can then say, well, in knowing others, how is it that I could understand them better without taking the assessment, right? It's like now that we have this sense of a language and a model and the research behind this model available to us, and you start to have a sense of, well, I'm actually quite people-focused. Like, it's really important to me all the time how other people around me are doing. And so if that's the case, you have a strength in that area. You may also have an overdone strength in that area, but that's for another day. And you may now be able to tap into, how do I determine what is important to my team members and how do I draw that out of them? So we listen for it. What do they say? What do they gravitate towards? What do they care most about? What are you hearing them say? Are they saying, where's the data and what happened last time? Or are they saying, well, who needs to know about this? Or are they saying, for heaven's sakes, like, this needs to be done tonight, no matter what, right? Like, these are hints that we start to hear. So, an example, if you are working with somebody and you're working hard, or you're working in a group and you're working hard to meet your client's expectations around something, and your team member says to you, well, I really think that we should be focusing on documenting this. Because if we're going to repeat this process and we want it to be successful, then we should be capturing it. And I'm in a place where, forget the documentation. We just need to be doing what the client needs, and I understand that, but this is where we need to be focusing. So how do we think that that response is going to make our teammate feel? Not necessarily heard, not necessarily appreciated, right? A little shut down. That's not what we want, right? So what's happening to them and to you in this moment is the conflict. It's the rub. And so that's where I say it can be minor or it can be massive, but it starts in a place where it can look very small. And to avoid that so it doesn't turn into somebody not wanting to participate or somebody taking a step back, you want them to be leaning into your event, right? You want them to be leaning into your leadership around it. And so maybe the other type of response that you can give is rather, I hear what you're saying. The process is important to me too, and we will document that. It's also important in this moment that we get this client what they need quickly. So why don't we think about both? So for now, you do this and I'll do this, and then we'll come back together and we'll regroup around what we learned. How does that sound? Right? I ask the person, how does that sound? They're given an opportunity to say, it sounds good to me, or I was kind of wondering maybe we could include this. Like, you're just creating that dialogue and that curiosity. So again, they feel heard and they feel received. So how is listening to other people's words in this context helpful to you? What words can you listen for?
Timeline?
Yes, exactly. And what group do you think that would be in? Performance. Yeah, likely yes, right? That's a hint of something that they might be motivated by. What might be another word in any of these groups that you might start to hear? What's important to somebody in people, in the people motivation group?
Relationships.
Yes, absolutely. So they may use the word relationship, or they may use the word, what about that partner we have, right? It matters to the partner what it is that we're doing. So you can see that this person cares about the partner's position. That person doesn't go directly to the timeline or the process. That's the first thing that might come out of their mouth. So that's a hint right there. What else might be happening? So we see process, right? We hear words like data, project, plan B, right? Right. If this doesn't work, then what's plan B? Like they're constantly thinking about that. They're assessing, right? How is it that this is going to perform? So you can see that it's very easy for us to now adopt a new tool or a new way of thinking and really just be receptive to those people that we're interacting with. And then know how to respond in kind. That's my hope anyway. So another powerful tool that I like to use, which may or may not be familiar to you or that you are practicing already, is pause, breathe, choose. So what's different for me in the way that I think about this is the choosing aspect, because it allows us to slow down the moment, think, oh, okay, I'm noticing a bit of a rub in this moment. Somebody is saying something different to what I thought we were off to the races about delivering the client expectations, and you're sort of putting a hold on things because you want to talk about the ROI and the process. So I'm going to pause in that moment, and I'm going to recognize that we're having a bit of a difference of the way that we're thinking. I'm going to breathe and think about what's happening to me in this moment. I know that my blood might be starting to boil a little bit. I can appreciate that, I'm not loving this. We're supposed to be moving forward together, and this seems like a roadblock to me. So what is it that I'm thinking in that moment? And then choose. This is the powerful part about what is it that I'm going to choose to do based on what this person is saying to me. And then I'm going to be choosing my words to accommodate them. I'm going to assert myself, but I'm also going to be listening to what they need so that we can come to a conversation around it. It moves us from a reaction to a thoughtful response. It's a practice at first, but then eventually it becomes part of our natural behavior. And my favorite topic is your energy. Remember when I was talking earlier about how I thought I was a reflective person, and I was a reflective person. I was going home at night thinking about what is my part in this? What can I do differently tomorrow? That was a distraction, right? That was taking away time from my partner. That was taking away time from my personal life because my mind was over here, always second guessing what it was that I was doing and the decisions I had made, harmlessly. Like I thought it was my job as a leader to just constantly be thinking about this. And to some degree, yes, we do need to be thoughtful. But when is it too much? And when I think about our opportunity to be focusing our energy in the right places, it comes from having a way of diagnosing something sooner rather than later. What I want for you is your self-awareness around this. To know that there are options. There are other ways of interacting with your team members and your loved ones. This personally changed my life. Thank you, and I look forward to having more conversation or questions. There's certainly a lot to dive into here in terms of your personal context, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you today.